I'm Sabrina Severin, along with Sarah Brady, Sophie Lawton, Isabel Murray, and Cody Willers, and our project is A Greener Lincoln. Urban pollution and congestion are major environmental issues we face today. Green spaces are a great solution when trying to combat these issues. Green spaces provide physical, mental, and ecological benefits. Spending time outside improves overall wellness in people while improving their physical and mental health. Another benefit for people is an increase in property value. If there are green spaces near their property, the value increases because it can be more aesthetically pleasing and allow for easier access to spending time outside. For ecological benefits, green spaces can help with biodiversity conservation. Green spaces provide habitat for different species while also preserving native plants. Another benefit is the cooling effect. With urban populations, temperatures may increase, leading to climate change. To help mitigate this climate change, green spaces provide a cooling effect which helps decrease the temperatures. The population in Lincoln is also increasing. Between 2016 and 2017 alone, the population grew by almost 5,000 people. The increased human impact corresponds to a greater need for green spaces within the city. Lincoln has done a great job in the past of creating and maintaining a large amount of urban green spaces and parks, but the green spaces in the city can still be improved. The problem that we are addressing is the decreasing biodiversity in Lincoln. The species that are endangered include a number of bird and plant species. There are approximately 30 endangered or threatened species in Nebraska alone. Some endangered plant species in Nebraska include small white lady slipper and the western fringe prairie orchid. Lincoln's native vegetation is tallgrass prairie with species such as big and little bluestem, buffalo grass, and blue grama. The city has lost its natural habitat with a decrease in tall grasses and an increased human presence. The low biodiversity and loss of native vegetation means there has also been a decrease in pollinators for the region. Our proposed solution is to identify and utilize specific places where green spaces can be managed. These spaces will support native species and help conserve the biodiversity of eastern Nebraska. Both common species and endangered or threatened species will be considered for this project to help mitigate the effects of urbanization and climate change on these natural species. Some at-risk plants include American ginseng, saltwort, small white lady slipper, and the western fringe prairie orchid. The goal is to utilize these at-risk plants along with non-endangered plants to support pollinators, insects, and other animals. Our proposed action contributes to meeting the UN Sustainability Goals by meeting Goals 13, 15, and 17. We help to meet Goal 13, climate action, because we are trying to convert green spaces to healthy, thriving, native vegetation which will decrease total atmospheric CO2. We help to meet Goal 15, life on land, because we are working to increase biodiversity within the city of Lincoln and to restore soil health. We help to meet Goal 17, partnerships, because we will partner with local businesses in order to plant native species. Economically, the cost of the project and to maintain it would mostly have to be covered by taxpayers. This would have a direct financial impact on the citizens of Lincoln. Local businesses and groups also have an economic interest if they work with the city to complete the project. Our potential partners include groups and businesses such as Greenstain, COLA, Veritas Group, and the Arbor Day Foundation. In addition, the location of these green spaces must be given extra consideration. Equal access to the green spaces is important, and socioeconomic status in different areas must be taken into consideration so as many people as possible have access to the parks. The types of plants chosen for this project must be considered based upon their abundance or lack of for at-risk species in the area, what types of grasses and flowering plants are native to eastern Nebraska, and what plants would best benefit native pollinators, insects, and small animals. It is important for sustainable practices like the one mentioned here to be a cultural part of the city because it is necessary to conserve native species and educate the youth about sustainable practices. In addition to helping the biodiversity of Lincoln, the increase in green space can help educate the public. Positive attitudes towards biodiversity and conservation in younger generations can promote lasting change and will play a role in increasing sustainable practices in the future. Our primary stakeholders include property owners, NGOs, and native species. Property owners are affected because green spaces in close proximity increases property values. NGOs and business partners are affected because they would be providing financial support and creating green spaces around Lincoln. Native species are impacted because the project would be creating more habitat for them. The secondary stakeholders include low-income communities and population wellness. It's shown that areas of predominantly white residents and more affluent communities have access to more green spaces. Low-income communities are commonly ignored of projects of this nature, so we are purposefully placing green spaces in these areas so all residents of Lincoln will experience benefits from this project. As discussed before, there are many benefits to having green spaces for the wellness of the population. One possible negative that these groups may have is that there would be a slight tax increase in order to complete our goals. Another challenge that might occur is increased housing costs around the green spaces. We looked at several alternatives that could help us to reach our goal of increasing biodiversity in the Lincoln area. First, we looked at Kearney, Nebraska. In Kearney, they are protecting major wetlands for sandhill cranes and other species that call the wetlands their home or their favorite rest stop during migration. The saline wetlands in Lincoln are already protected in order to save the critically endangered Salt Creek tiger beetle. So, to increase biodiversity in Lincoln even further, we are focusing on Lincoln's native grasses, pollinators, and birds. For the city of Cincinnati, they increased tree cover in order to increase biodiversity and to reduce the heat island effect. A cost-benefit comparison was made which showed for 100 trees, the cost would be $51,000, while the benefit would be $510,000. The benefits include things such as stormwater retention, enhanced property value, and reduced energy bills. This creates benefits 10 times the cost, but this option will not be good for Lincoln because having a dense population of trees is not part of Lincoln's natural prairie lands. Currently happening in Lincoln is the Prairie Corridor Project on Haynes Branch. This project involves reintroducing and protecting native tallgrass species, protecting freshwater and saline wetlands, and outreach and education to the public. We are hoping to extend the benefits of this project to more parts of Lincoln by increasing green spaces throughout the city. The ethics test that we utilize to determine our final recommendation is the best outcomes test, which is also known as the utilitarian approach. The question asked while determining our final recommendation are, will this action plan produce the best outcomes for everyone affected? And are we maximizing good and minimizing bad? One ethical problem we ran into was that we had to ensure that the green spaces were spread equally between neighborhoods of all socioeconomic status so that we can ensure that all residents of Lincoln are having an equal share of the benefits of our actions. We define the environment as the natural world, which is made up of ecosystems and the four spheres of Earth. These spheres are the biosphere, atmosphere, lithosphere, and the hydrosphere. These spheres are interconnected and they determine the climate of our planet. We define ethic as a set of moral principles. Our environmental ethic is that all organisms hold value whether we understand their purpose for the ecosystem yet or not. All organisms hold value intrinsically, which means they hold value just because they exist on this planet. Because we value all life on Earth, we are very passionate about increasing the biodiversity of the Lincoln area. Restoring and maintaining areas of Lincoln to its natural habitat can affect all four of the planet's spheres. The biosphere sees an increase in biodiversity. With more areas with grasses that can hold the soil in place, the lithosphere will experience slower or even reverse rates of soil erosion. Because soil structure will increase with plant cover and organic materials going into the soil, water infiltration will increase, which will reduce occurrences of standing water or flooding. The atmosphere will be affected because the green spaces will sequester carbon from the atmosphere. As seen in this causal diagram, there are numerous benefits to increasing native vegetation through green spaces. Some of these benefits include decreased atmospheric temperatures, reduced flood risk, and increased money for conservation programs. Having increased money for conservation programs means there would be more money to fund projects like the one we wish to implement. So, this creates a positive feedback loop because our project would then increase native vegetation even more. Our final recommendation is to identify areas in Lincoln where green spaces can be managed to support natural species such as native tall grasses and pollinators. This solution encompasses our environmental ethic, our ethics test, and our stakeholders' needs. These areas are spread throughout Lincoln and extend the goal of the Haynes Branch Prairie Corridor Project. These areas are selected and spread out between neighborhoods that include all without excluding groups based on socioeconomic class. Out of the alternatives, this was the best solution for Lincoln because it best encompasses the need of Lincoln and its residents. Our research further gave more evidence to explain the importance of green spaces in urban areas on human well-being. We learned that it is important to preserve native species first based on their intrinsic value, and secondly, on the services they provide to the ecosystem. These species are best suited for the natural habitats that make up Lincoln.